back on live?
Test. Yeah, it's in.
All right, just
Coming
so
through my hearing aids.
yeah, I'll repeat it for the because we are having a little bit of technical difficulties tonight. The only purpose of the meeting is to have a discussion about law enforcement and the fact that we don't have any dedicated law enforcement at the town level in town, and that we've got a lot of feedback from the community about concerns about volume of calls and vibe that involve needing police response. We get plenty of complaints about speeding. We have multiple state-owned roads that go through here with a lot of country roads coming into them, and we have some hot spots where we have a lot of car accidents or what we perceive to be a lot. So we want to have an early conversation, just what does municipal policing look like? What can it look like? What's the long term? What's the short term? And those sorts of things. So all I'd ask is the two of you introduce yourself, leaning into the microphone, and then we'll have some questions.
My name's Eric Sampson. I'm the Inchiquin County Sheriff.
William Gagney. I'm the Chief Deputy.
Perfect.
And I guess I'll give you a quick rundown of things you might have overlooked or maybe you're aware of for consideration. The Sheriff's Office offers rural patrol. We run 4 a shift with a minimum staffing of 3 for the whole county. We have 1 contract town where the deputies contracted for that town remain in that town unless called out for travesties that we've experienced in other areas, or to back up Mechanic Falls, because Poland is our only contract town now. But they have designated deputies which also help enforce their ordinances or other things. It's more of how a municipal police department would function, where rural patrol is rural patrol, respond to emergencies, do traffic enforcement, things like that. What we've provided to you is a rundown of the numbers or call volume we've experienced in Durham, as well as a sample contract. It's actually a contract we used in Poland with taking them out, but it's our pretty much standard contract. We have that with the town. We have it with 2 school districts for our SROs. We've used salaries in there based on what we're hiring. One of them is our top pay. He's on the top of the pay scale, so for your purposes, it would be worst case scenario. The other one's right in the middle. And then very rarely, we've been fortunate with hiring practices that we attract from other agencies, but with that, you're getting the experience and the training's all taken care of, but they come in higher on our scale because they're credited for the years of experience where we come from. The only thing we didn't include in the contract, because the markets are always changing, is the capital. So currently how it is, we have nothing extra in the fleet. Poland had started out with 2 vehicles that they were paying for. When we entered into a contract, because they'd have to put in their CIP plan, it wasn't working for us, it wasn't working for them, we came up with a flat fee where we would cover all capital. Cruisers, mobile terminals, radios, radars, rifles, shotguns, cell phones, anything in the car. The only thing that we don't determine, and different communities have different things available, I don't know what Durham's situation is gasoline fuel for the vehicle. Generally, we pay for it at Public Works in Lewiston. We have an agreement with them. The town of Poland, for the Poland deputies, they go to their Public Works and just, we don't get a bill, we don't pay anything, we just fill up our cruisers there. We've had this conversation before in Durham. It's been explored different things, different options. I'd say the interest has been consistent and it's coming up more frequently. Typically when things come up more frequently, they occur to happen. For the absorption of the cost, I usually project, try to talk people into not going full tilt, because that can overwhelm, so your opportunity for success at, say, town meeting might be a little less, unless I'm underestimating the demand.
No, you're estimating.
Yeah, so I've, someone, we want this. I'm like, well, maybe you start out with 2 deputies. We'll go 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And later on you can build off that, because you also get to give us a chance to acquire vehicles and all the equipment. Sometimes with the watch guard equipment, which I forgot to mention, it's taken us 8 or 9 months to get that.
What's watch guard equipment?
It's the body worn, the car cameras, the recording system.
We try to have all the vehicles outfitted the same, so everything's just very consistent.
And the good thing about, now here's where I'll talk about the pros, because I think I touched this briefly, but I don't, I'm willing to take questions. the pros to contracting is, especially in a smaller community, is the county already has the administrative costs. We have HR, we have payroll, we have a sheriff, a chief deputy, we have a rank structure. When times are tough with hiring, we have the others that we can order to fill the shifts. A lot of small towns, like we cover when Mechanic Falls was having shortages or Sabatis, we were covering their shifts where they had nobody internally to cover it. So like if a Durham position, if you were to contract and somebody resigns and we can't fill it, we're filling it through overtime with county. So your contract will be on. Some confusion with the contract is we had one town that thought, well, we'll contract with you, but our guy's going to be in Auburn coming here, and we were like, no. When they're here, we actually we ask you to designate a substation for them to operate out of. Other than court time or arrests or things they need to go to the office for, they're in Durham for their whole shift. The liabilities, therefore, transfer onto the county. We're self-insured. The negotiations, the wages, the training, workman's comp issues are avoided from the town. So you have a lot of reduced liability. And the cost savings towards contracting is the administrative back office operations. And over the past even decade, it's probably gone all along. I'm sure the fire has experienced the same thing. The amount of records we're required to keep, the FOIA requests we're always answering. We have a records clerk. We'd actually like two, but right now we have one. So when you look at some of the smaller towns and the cost it is for them to run their police departments, and it's like an ownership thing, kind of like your elementary school or your library. I think our agreement with Poland works good. We participate in their department head meetings, or we meet with their town manager whenever requested. If they used to want us to go to budget committee meetings, they don't ask us to anymore. We serve them like employees of theirs. If the residents have an issue, we're able to target it because we have designated staff for it. They recently went from 16-hour-a-day coverage, which I wouldn't really offer because it was unattractive shifts that we couldn't really hire for. They had a revolving door. Now they're at 24-hour coverage, so their schedule is the same as our patrol deputies. When people have talked to me, there's the town of Durham and there's another town that I try to say, why don't you look at 12-hour coverage to start, and you can build off that. The issue we have when you start contracting, because we were approached with having a deputy 5 days a week, 40, their work hours are 42 hours, that's what they get paid for. The issue becomes, and it's changed now because call sharing has changed with the state police. So we're kind of in every town all the time anyway. But once we contract with a town, it's ours whether the contract time is theirs or not. Ours meaning we're responsible for everything. The state police will assist us, obviously, but a call after hours of the contract, we're still responding to it, but it'll be like we do now from Auburn, Turner, Greene, wherever the available deputies at. So I think that's kind of like a brief rundown. Both of us are pretty familiar with the numbers of it all, or any questions you might have. I just wanted to give you a broad brush so we can take it from where you're interested.
To start right off, rather than stare at my phone, add all this, do you know off the top of your head what this number adds up to in terms of calls received from Durham in 2023?
For 23?
Yeah.
I don't have the exact number.
But it's
I
like,
gave you a list of all the calls for 22, 23, and then for January 1st to June 30th of this year.
okay, but like what I'm seeing here is these numbers is the quantity, so right off the bat,
So, like, just for 22, for example, there were 7 abandoned motor vehicles, 93 abandoned 911 calls, 89 accidents, 94 traffic stops, 1 threatening.
Yeah. What I'm getting at is it's a fair amount, a lot. Like
Well,
it looks
and
like
there's
this is adding up to like 1,000.
This is in Durham?
Yes.
There's been years where, like, what sparked the first conversation is there was a burglary issue during the daytime. I guess the bedroom community came up to play. That was a major concern at one time. That was actually prior to 2015 because I was on the road while it was going on. And, the only recording equipment we could find was like at the get-and-go, and things lined up, and we're in Topsom doing follow-ups. That stopped. But there's just usually something that occurs that spawns the interest. I think over the past year it's been more of communities wanting something a little bit more. And we try to, spread our resources amongst the county as best we can. I don't typically advocate because I don't think it's right to solicit, but at the same time, if you're interested, we're interested in providing the service. So obviously we're willing to have the conversation, but it's up to the select boards. And I'm glad at least you're kicking the tires, exploring the options.
So many of these calls don't get publicized. They're not something that we do press releases. As you can see in 22, there was 5 sex offenses in the town. There's usually DHS referrals that come in, allegations of sexual abuse.
Well, and on that note, when I talk back office, we also have 4 detectives on staff. So CID services, another thing that's hired for.
Can you say what CID is?
Criminal investigation detectives. And like currently right now we have one sworn in through the Attorney General's Office for domestic violence issues. We have an accident reconstructionist. You all probably know we have K-9 through the deputies, but I'm just saying these are things that a lot of time a town looking to start a police department, there's a big bill to it, where we have a lot of the bill covered, but we also have additional resources that are available to you, not only now, but obviously as part of the contract.
Yeah, so what you're essentially saying is you already have this built-down infrastructure and resources, so if a town is starting its own department, it might be years down the road before they get the K-9 or the detective, whereas you're saying you have it there, so if it's needed, you can call it in.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, we noticed through our recruitment over the past decade, because that's how long we've been doing it, having a lot of opportunities within the organization helps retain people.
Mm-hmm.
And we invest a lot in training. One of the biggest things we pushed for out of the gate was a larger training budget, and you wait for it to plateau, so we try to increase it, but we've supported, whether it's the cyber guy, computer issues isn't my thing, but we're sending him down to federal training all the time. He's like a resource statewide now. The accident reconstruction, the mapping, the guy that does the vehicle autopsies, K-9. So we support the employees developing their specialties, but those are also resources within that you hope to maintain through retirements and things of that nature.
Can I just add to that, because you left out something, I don't want to praise you too much, but you left out, you also have the people on the federal task forces, which brings in those resources as well when they're necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So one of our detectives who's got all this training and gadgets and cell phones, he works with the federal FBI. So basically we've got him on a 4-day-a-week schedule, but Fridays he works for the federal government. And he's actually turned into a resource for them. We send him and another that we've been starting to send for trainings for these specialties in Alabama. So we've been fortunate to recruit really good people, people that are interested in serving, that have interest in not just occupying a space, but developing things of interest. And we've been fortunate enough to be able to support them, whether it's through the training or equipment needed to do these side jobs.
So, Heather, is your question about a contract? Because before we went into that, what I wanted to just, because I know that one thing people are going to ask is, well, we already, and this is by no means leveling insult or anything, but they say, we already pay taxes in the county, what does that get us now? And so I know you mentioned something about rural patrol, so what I'm trying to understand is like, now, what is it you all are only responding when called, or is there ever a patrol going through town, or what's that frequency without, let's say, could we just kind of quantify for everyone watching what we have right now?
Sure. Right now, at minimal, we'll have 3 on duty patrolling 14 towns, 6 of which have their own, I think it's 6, have their own police departments. So they're responsible from Livermore to Durham, Minot, Greene, Leeds. So while those 3 deputies are on duty, they could be, patrolling in Leeds, doing a car accident on Route 4, something on College Street in Greene, or they could be in Durham. So when you're calling 911, you could have the travel time issues, where if you had a contract deputy, they would be in your town, patrolling for speed and purpose.
So in theory, 3 on 24/7?
Minimum.
In theory, does that mean some officer while patrolling or deputies passing through Durham every day at some part of Durham?
Yeah. We ask them to have a presence in every town. We actually have them do certain activities to promote visibility that I don't really want to, but.
Well, I know they've been in town before.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there. And when I was on the road, Durham is an outlier, but
I just wasn't sure because my understanding is most of the towns north of us have police departments. So I know you probably have to pass through towns with departments to get to us. I wasn't sure if that kind of plays into what a patrol ends up looking like, or if you patrol towns with departments less, towns without departments more. Those sorts of
The
things.
ones that have their departments, or like Poland,
Mhm.
like I tell our guys, hey, Poland's a contract town, but don't be afraid to swing through.
Mhm.
It is, because you got Mechanic Falls and Auburn in the way.
Yeah.
But I think they try to at least, especially the supervisors. It's the same thing here. We don't patrol, we do patrol when we're passing through, let's say Sabatis.
Mhm.
But we're not responding to calls unless called for assistant. You know, they might, like I've had OUIs in Sabatis when I was just traveling through, that happens. But the towns that have their own designated police department, that's not our focus.
Mhm.
It's the towns that don't, that's what we're here for.
Okay.
If that helps you a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's answering my question, because I know one thing that's important for us out of tonight's exercise is to say, here's what we're getting right now,
Mm.
so everyone knows, and then do we want to expand that more? And I think that kind of encapsulates. And what it sounds like, if you've got 3 officers on patrolling 14 towns, in a perfect world where there's no calls and you can just drive around all day and patrol, but I'm sure you're getting called to Livermore, you're getting called to Green or whatever,
Yeah.
and so
Say-
you
say
might have
the-
planned on driving through Durham, but you get tied up.
And in case the numbers becomes a question, so when I'm talking 3 for the county, that's for the communities that don't have their police
Yeah.
departments. Then you add the 4th, which will be in Poland. So
Mhm.
for argument's sake, there's 4 on duty at
Okay.
minimum, but 1 is contracted with Poland, so he's not leaving there. And I've left out the SROs, which are in the schools. And
Mhm.
off-season, they work in the communities that they're contracted with through the school, because,
Mhm.
you know, they're paying for that.
All right. Cool. Those were my questions on that, so we can go around and ask questions. Go ahead, Heather.
So this says calls for service. Does this mean responses? Like, have you responded to 105 accidents in Durham in 2023, or there were just?
Typically, if it's a call for service, the deputy is either responding or starting a phone call, talking with the complainant, having to follow through and do reports on it.
Because I added it up as 1,073 for 2023, which is
Okay, and then the four deputy, am I saying that right? Sorry. 4 deputies on 3 minimum, 1 of the 4 is dedicated to Poland. Does that mean that if if Durham decided to do this, and we did 1 dedicated, that would come out of that 4?
That's
No,
additional.
it would be an
So
additional.
if you said, we want to contract 2 deputies, 7 days, you know, a deputy, 7 days a week, so our shifts are 12 hours, so that would be 2 deputies. It would be, now we'd have 5 on every day.
Okay.
minimum.
So just to clarify, so
I
there's
follow- I
a
follow- yeah,
sergeant, a corporal, 2 patrolmen in the county.
And then
One
the
of, and Poland has 1.
Okay.
So
But what we do, because we saw this shift over time, and then it changes because of, the calls are a little bit different today. They're more intensive, they demand more from the courts. Violence is up, we'll just say, as that. So the idea originally, we had the minimum of 3 on plus Poland, but we have 4 on the shift plus Poland. More often than not, we're going with 4. But the original was to have the skeleton for the first man out, because people didn't like being ordered in, and, you know, covering, and we wanted people to have their time off. So we try to do it, because budgetary, we can't afford to pay overtime to have 4 on all the time. But initially with the 4 on, sergeant, corporal, 24-hour supervision, 2 deputies, you know, plus Poland, we weren't replacing the first one out.
okay.
Can I keep going with my list? Is that
absolutely.
fine?
Yep.
So, the 2 proposals, one's for 2, one's for 4. The 2 wouldn't be on at the same time?
No.
Okay. But it's 7 days a week, but it's 1 deputy, 12 hours, unless we went 24.
And these are just, they're not
Right.
proposed, they're just examples.
Right, yeah,
how our schedule works is you work 2 days, have 2 days off, work 3.
yes.
So 1 would be work and 1 would be off.
They work a 14-day pay cycle.
And so the 12 hours would align with your shift. Like, we wouldn't be able to align our 12 hours. Like, if we had the most amount of calls between 4 p.m. and 4 a.m., we wouldn't be able to choose
You
the
would-
12
we-
hours.
We
It
would
be-
work with you to do that. I mean, we would want some sort of stable structure. So for, I don't want to get in all the,
Yeah.
we work a 5 to 5.
Okay.
Before Poland went to 24-hour coverage, they worked to 7 till whenever.
Okay.
It wasn't 7 to 7 because it was a bizarre schedule, and it was hard for us to keep people because they had pretty much weekends off except for Sunday, so we kind of had to do it with part-time employees because the training, court requirements, things like that, it made it not really, in the types of crimes we're investigating, we felt more comfortable having full-time academy trained rather than the part-time employee. And then, court requirements, part-time employees generally have full-time employment elsewhere. It was hard to get them to go to court. We had one guy flying planes, so we didn't even know if he'd be, here. So we just did away with what they used to call reserve deputies, and it's all full-time at this point.
So one other thing while I'm going
But if you
through
said you
this.
wanted 8 to 8, 7 to 7, we can work with that.
Okay, so when I'm looking at this first, like the estimated cost for 2 deputy proposal, that 288, that includes all the capital?
No.
Okay, that, I was like, whoa, what are we talking about? Let's go.
That includes all their medical insurance, their
Got it.
reinstate retirement, social security, FICA, uniform allowances.
Right,
They're
so the yearly expense for vehicle fleet, that's not,
determined yet.
So that is in the contract, because what we do is the vehicle maintenance. So like for the town of Poland, for example, that takes care of all their oil changes, vehicle repairs, tires, wipers, anything for maintenance for the vehicle.
Okay.
But it doesn't take care of the actual, capital, or I should say it will take care of the capital moving forward, but the initial capital is where we have to get.
and that number's not reflected here.
Correct.
Right, and it's to your benefit and our benefit. Like, it's our benefit if we have coverage down here, because then we know we have coverage down here. So it's to your benefit with the capital that we finance it out, because it lowers the cost. So we have a built-in payment for Poland that reflects what they're using, and we just buy and sell cars. And it helps us as far as if we have a Poland deputy who decides to transfer to the county, we don't have to leave the car and switch them for another. They just take the car and we put a replacement there.
Right.
And it would work the same with them. So the idea would be, we'd have to look at, because it's worthwhile for us to make some sort of investment into this, and we would keep the equipment, if all of a sudden 5 years from now, say we don't want the contract anymore. But we would look at what are we pricing the vehicles at, because it's not a money-making thing, it's how to make it affordable for you and what can we absorb that we have on hand to help you out with capital, because the startup can be a little bit expensive.
So then, my other question, which I don't expect you to be able to answer tonight, and this might be a question for Jerry, was that when we were talking about that initial grant that we missed the deadline because that was in May, if we were going this route, because we're not necessarily starting our own police department, I just would like to know if that grant would still apply if we were doing contract coverage.
I would have to look, but I think it is, I think it would, because it's a grant to have more coverage, more police in your town. I'd have to look at the grant.
Is it caught fast?
It was from the Department of Justice.
Yeah, and if there's grants available, we would be, if we qualify, happy to use them for this purpose. Because like I said, it actually, we have minimal resources, there's all kinds of considerations that go into building a budget and what you offer.
And is that something that you would seek out, or is that something we would seek out?
Oh,
I-
it'd be the town.
I think either way, I think usually
Billy would work with somebody.
one supports the other, so if we did it, we would want, support letters from you, or if you did it, it would be support letters from us to you.
And the last cost fast grant we received was, I think, 4 years ago.
It was in 2020 when the state police pulled out of call sharing. We were able to get 2 deputies to help offset some of the coverage.
So if I remember correctly, it was
pays-
75%
yeah,
of
you can pay up to
startup costs.
75%. Is that the same
Yeah,
program?
so usually it's the first year, I think is it was either 100 or 75, and that usually breaks down. You have to have, the first 3 years, they pay a percentage, and I think the 4th year, you have to commit 100%.
Yeah, so what we did is we looked at the percentages, and then we realized they give you the money, it's available for 3 years. So what we did is made gradual steps, so the impact at the end of the 3rd year wasn't gonna be this $200,000 figure. Kind of looking at, I kind of, numbers come to me quick. So I realized that if we start adjusting that percentage now and absorb a little bit every year, when the money's gone, it's not gonna be $100,000 hit, it'll be a $15,000 hit.
Yeah.
But yeah, you make use of the money during the term of and then the agreement would be you hold on to it for a year or two
I think it's a
after.
year.
So that's there. But typically, I find that when things are built into the budget, it's normally accepted. It gives you the time to build up gradually.
And that grant program is revolving.
It
happens
is.
every year, yeah, that's what I thought.
And we get I mean, I can get your email, I usually get notifications when it's coming up.
And that's why when you look at some of the capital items, sometimes there's grants available that are applicable to some of the items we need. And currently, of course, the federal government closures are not finalizing a budget. Whatever happened just a few months ago, and we were working with Congressman Golden's office to supply us with new mobile terminals. So there's something that could be absorbed, take that off the capital costs. Right now, we're working with the same office, a different individual, different grant, for
Upgrade our watch guard cameras.
system, because it's like 8 years old. So those are things, if we're doing it already and we're just incorporating it, it kind of lowers, that's why we really couldn't give you a figure now. We would figure it in.
To have no point of reference is a little bit hard for my brain, so I don't want to put you on the spot and ask you for a point of reference, but like, it's really hard to be like, this is the number and this is so detailed, and I appreciate that, but like, to have absolutely no point of reference in terms of the capital
Point
cost
of
is a
reference
little bit
would
hard.
be the capital cost we're doing for Poland is 40-something thousand,
Yeah, we're currently budgeting 40,000 a year
but there's 4 of them.
so if you look at the four-man proposal,
Yes,
I think it's like
Oh.
40,000.
yes.
So I just took about half of it. We're seeing the increase in some of the expenses, like, oil changes have
Yeah,
gone up.
that was my question. That's for expenses.
That's for the
vehicle. That's not
expenses.
acquiring the vehicle, the equipment.
For
and
us,
all that stuff.
to purchase a brand new vehicle and outfit it with radio, watch guard and everything, it's about 75,000.
And we finance them for 3 years.
Mhm.
That's why I'm saying with Poland, I believe the budget line for it is 40-something thousand.
It's 40,000, but that's just for now that we already have the capital in place, it's kind of like the maintenance of it, to keep it going.
Josh, you had a question.
I did. I wanted to back up, before we start talking about, the contract and all that stuff. Was it back in the beginning of April, we heard from Ryan McGee about what he believed is the town of Durham's need for more law enforcement coverage. And I know that Chief has likely has some comments about his thoughts when fire department rescue is responding, and I want to get your opinion also. But what are your thoughts? I mean, you guys, I've known you both for seems like forever, and so I know you've been there in some position or another for a long time. What is your opinion about Durham's need today for more law enforcement coverage?
Well, I'm not a Durham resident. When I was working the road, I was patrolled Durham, showed up to many of the car accidents. Towns start police services for different reasons, and I look at where Poland fits. I mean, not Poland, where Durham fits, like on the map and coverage-wise. I can see why people would want the service. I think it's a worthwhile investment. The conservative person in me says don't go full tilt, but I can also understand why people would want to go full tilt. But you also got to understand, if you were to go for 24-hour coverage, we'll say, that means we got to find 4 people, we got to find 4 cars and 4.
I want to get to all that.
Oh, okay.
Those
So
are
as far as law enforcement coverage or any type of contracting, I would encourage anybody of interest, when you look at what's going on, whether the violent crimes we're seeing, the ability to assist fire and rescue. Fire and rescue in Poland is why we went to 24-hour coverage there. They said hold off on giving us anything this year, and we need this because of the type of calls they were going to requiring police assistance. So, what I'm saying, you might want to go 12 hours. It doesn't necessarily support the argument that the fire department made. I'm looking at it as a cost perspective. I support, obviously, contractor service because it benefits not only the community to have the representation, but it gives us more boots on the ground to deal with the issues we're dealing with. I mean, we take a day a week now where we run the options program throughout the county. So that's taking a person off the road, and that's very valuable. It reduces the follow-up, it reduces overdoses, it connects people with resources. So there's always things coming up, demands on law enforcement, or just where we're picking up, it would assist us in that. So it's a welcome help. At this point, I have a hard time going to the county commissioners or budget committee, asking for more boots on the ground, because we have 6 communities that have their own police services, whether contracted or embedded. But I also see a need, and I see where our peoples are tied up, not necessarily on the number of calls, but the distance from call to call. So I'm a supporter of it, but I understand it's up to your town.
I'm sure, one of the things we're seeing more and more of when we were on the road, we didn't have the overdoses that they're experiencing now. The mental health probably wasn't like it was now. So that's probably a lot of the calls that the fire department's going to that requires law enforcement. And Durham's kind of like isolated, where some of the other communities we're neighboring. So if I'm in Green, I'm next to Turner, I'm next to Leeds, I'm next to Wales. Where Durham, you guys are kind of down here, so it makes it a little bit more difficult sometimes.
So you don't have like a tipping point where you're supporting communities and you're looking at the calls coming in, some records of things that you would say to the community, we think you need to change your
already.
approach. I mean, we had Officer McGee come as a resident, right? And he just, by doing a bunch of research, came to the board and said we should do something. I'm just wondering, have you felt that as well?
Are you talking
Yeah,
particularly
as
with
a
Durham?
police, yes, yeah.
There's another community within Amstrad County that I tell them you're way overdue.
Okay.
Do I feel Durham is overdue? No. Do I see a growing community that could benefit from having the resource? Yeah. But I'm coming from a law enforcement background who understands that enforcing the law and traffic is one thing, but community engagement is another.
Right.
And just the resource to the town. In my view, I think Durham's grown a lot over the past 10 or 20 years. At the same time, I see the throughway 136 is, I used to be out here, I worked night shift, and I used to like being here at 3 o'clock in the morning, because I don't know who's getting out of work, but 136 is a raceway, so it was like fishing in a barrel, so to say. And from that, you get OUIs and probably contributing factors to those 1,000 crashes you're dealing with. And there's activities that you're dealing with. No community is immune, but I'm not going to say that, boy, Durham, you've got issues, you need law enforcement. That's not why I'm an advocate of it. I think having the direct resource available to you is beneficial to everybody. It would be beneficial to the sheriff's office, beneficial to the residents of the community.
If we have defined folks here, is there a proactive plan, like because they're here full-time? Are there things that you provide more of a proactive?
My experience is the follow-ups, we'll say, to calls is quicker,
Yeah.
is more thorough, because you're not dealing with, they're calling Green and then the next day they're working, and rather being able to follow up or to knock on doors, they're busy with something in Turner or Wales. Because I was a polling contract deputy, and what I liked is I could get from one end of town to the other in 20 minutes, and I could follow up the next day on everything I missed the day before. When I went over to the county, I found sometimes the schedule or the call volume doesn't allow you to do that. So I think everything's investigated thoroughly, whether it's county or the contract towns. I just think when you're in a contract town, you actually have that benefit of being there. You're going to be there the 12 hours, and you can always circle back around. You know
That's a
what I
good
mean?
point, yeah.
Whether it's my schedule as the patrol deputy or the residents on a road that I need to talk to, hey, what'd you see? House got burglarized. Operating around that, I think it's, you have dedicated staff for that.
Can I go?
Yeah, and I think there's also, because there's one or two deputies always in that town, they get to know the townspeople, so they
Get more
they
information.
go to the Durham Get and Go. They know who the people are, where it's not just somebody passing through grabbing a soda and they really don't communicate. You know, they get to know the fire department a lot better. And the school.
So where there's a need, you know, in some communities there's more of a need, you know, like, I don't want to name a community because then everybody will say, what's wrong with them? Well, let's say Lewiston has their police department because of the need. But there's also, I can't think of the right word, so I'm going to say side bets to having police services and just the presence in your community. And some people, when they have nothing else, you know, they have that, you know, whether it's a lift assist with the fire department or just neighborhood engagements of driving down and seeing kids, you know, playing basketball. Hey, you know, whatever. It's a positive effect there that sometimes people overlook.
I want,
Joe had a question, and then I was going to go to the two of them.
Go ahead, Josh.
Unless you're fine.
well, I wanted to talk about community engagement and what that would look like, because I think that's a big benefit, but I wanted to give Chief an opportunity to talk about whether he sees the need. I know you haven't been here too long, but you come with experience, and so I'd ask you the same question.
I like to provide data, just the data guy, right? Not opinion, live in Pownell type of stuff. We work well every day with the Sheriff's Department. We've run 3 calls today. I was just with the Sheriff's Department. Our issue, now that we're staffed 24, is, you know, these medical, mental sort of health advisories. If you start looking back, all the numbers are doubling from year over year. We just had it. We're not supposed to go in scene safety until sheriff arrives. We are updated, maybe even ETA or where they're responding from, but a lot of times it's not Durham. So it's literally on the other side of the county. So in theory, you know, last call, possible suicide, we're supposed to wait outside for sheriff to make it safe. In good conscience, because I run most calls, I can't wait outside while someone is possibly having a medical inside, or we can intervene. So we sometimes go into harm's way. 2 calls ago, we were in harm's way. All the medical are going out. Same thing with car wrecks. We do need law enforcement, and we don't go to all of them, right? A lot of times, sheriff will go non-injury reported, but you know, our guys are doing traffic control, assessing for hazards. We do need law enforcement. Recently, there was none available. DUI, we needed a game warden to stop and help us out. They were looking for mutual aid. I think we had 2 Lisbon officers come, and that's beginning to be not the norm, but frequent. And
Well, you guys had
it's
3
because of their
medicals
busy.
today, right?
What's
You
that?
had 3 medical calls in the
Yes,
last
and we
24
just
hours.
used the sheriff.
Last night, too.
Recently, I shooed some drug activity away from the runaround pond myself, just because I was there. By the time you call, again, proximity, it's really just spinning the wheel. Are they busy somewhere else? Are they in town? There's no rhyme or reason, and we would feel better. I mean, the citizens would clearly benefit from a police presence, and so would the fire department. What that looks like is up to you.
So
And the reason why I was doing the 2 over 4 is trying to make it affordable and an introduction, then people would experience the benefit and probably be more supportive. But we bring it up to Poland, and it was kind of unheard of. And then a new fire chief came in, and he said, we can't have this thing. You know, and it was, I don't know what your population rates are in comparison, but he's right, the frequency goes up. I'm a big supporter of the CIT, Crisis Intervention Program with NAMI. I'm actually the District 3 regional chair, or whatever. We coordinate the training. A couple of years ago, they were proposing laws to have an introduction of basic level, basic law enforcement training program, the academy. They reduced it to an 8-hour course, which I think is good, because I think the training is better if you have some experience in the communities dealing with people with mental health related issues. That way you can reflect on it during your training. But there's a requirement that 20% of your department has to be trained, and I think we're at 80%. And I think the people are seeing it because of, it's just the level of stuff we're dealing with. I don't know if the consent decree in the 90s had affected that, but we're dealing with a lot more, whether it's substance abuse issues or mental health related issues regularly.
And then for community engagement, I mean, people are thinking, you know, when you think about it, you're thinking about they're going to be out there investigating crimes, pulling people over, that sort of thing. But that's not all the deputies would be doing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they'd be.
We have deputies that go to the schools, even to the schools that have the SROs, they check in, make sure they're seen. You know, the Poland guys are, I mean, they go to the fire department all the time. I come down here, it's the first time I met the chief. So a lot of the officers might get to know a few people, but there's a lot of interaction with the fire department, public works, the local stores, the local business owners. So, I mean, we try to get them community-based and involved with the community.
And they try to get familiar with the territories, like we put up some standards that are a little bizarre, but the guys, so it encourages more property checks, networking. Prior to COVID, we were encouraging to stop at schools, maybe start by taking a walk through, and then maybe go during lunchtime, maybe during the schoolyard, because a lot of people, they never have the opportunity to interact with police, but at the same time, you have some people that their interaction might only be negative. So rather than raise an alarm, and we were starting on a good track, even people that were resistant to the idea of just stopping in at school, it is kind of weird, but then COVID happened, and that kind of gets off track. We encourage them to stop by the ball fields while there's games going, to be part of the community. Not to sound hokey, but that's really all it's about, but it's an important part of it, because you want the people's support in your job, and a lot of times it gives people a chance to ask, the officer, the deputy there, questions about things that, I've been asked some very bizarre questions just standing there, and that's okay, but it builds off that, and it's beneficial both ways around.
Heather, you had a question, and then I'll come over to you, Chief.
I have a comment actually about the SRO. So Durham is a little bit of an anomaly because we're in a school district with Cumberland County towns, and so the SRO that's in Freeport actually can't respond to anything in Durham because it's a Cumberland County employee. So I definitely see that as a benefit in terms of our school when we're talking about this. And then I own daycare, and we do community helper day, and the fire department comes over with a truck, and I happen to have a Brunswick police officer who has a child, so we've been able to expose the kids, to law enforcement in a positive way through that. But having it be a member of the community, I think, would also be, a benefit to start really young with that narrative that.
I used to go and read them books some of them were kind of interesting, but yeah, those are the types of things you can expect, and in a town like Durham, you'll want to know where these opportunities are because it's part of the networking thing. So,
And Chief, you had a question?
There's other tangibles that I see that probably the public doesn't. So sheriffs have transported the mentally ill, for us. They feel more comfortable just going in a car. They don't get an ambulance bill. There's other tangibles, and it happens quite frequently, really. We don't have the data on it, but it happens frequently. Certainly firefighter safety going into these houses, it's a judgment call on all of them. And, recently, again, not publicized, but, the sheriff, we've had 2 or 3 arson cases, and now it's not the same department. Now we're dealing with forest rangers, and then some of them are state police. There's possibly a arson case, within a mile of the border the other night, sexual assaults. So to have go-to sheriffs that we work with also helps. Otherwise, it's just sort of spreading it around as you talk about days off.
with
Your
that-
designees are your designees. So it's not like you get 4 contract. One day it's going to be me, the next day it's going to be Billy. We're going to hire Tom, Larry, Jane, and Jill, and you're going to have Tom, Larry, Jane, and Jill until they, put in to get promoted or transfer. So you have the opportunity to have that consistency that you're talking about.
So to follow what Chief said, I'm thinking about some of the transports, suicidal ideations, kind of a repeat customer, gets get transported a lot. That's times where maybe the officer that's stationed here for the shift could do the transport there. If there's not a truly life-threatening medical, it just maybe needs to be a transport to a better safe space that can open up those possibilities.
Yeah, it
potentially.
can, because we do that, but at the same time, we have a crisis network that a lot of times we can get the individual to provide the crisis on scene through phone, through whatever, so that can alleviate everybody, because you know what it's like once you go to the hospital. But at the same time, we often transport people to the hospital for those services until we're released by them. And then some people, it just aren't appropriate to be a transport in the ambulance, but like the chief is saying, it's weird. Some want nothing to do. Can you just give me a ride in the car? Sure. But yeah, there's an opportunity for that. And I also wanted to add, when you're talking this rise in numbers through this NAMI involvement, we do every month we submit a form to mental health related calls or crisis related calls where it's the primary. So if you're burglarized and we show up and find out it's somebody that's in some sort of a mental health crisis, but we're there for the primary of burglary, we might miss the crisis, the mental health related part. But if the primary reason for our call is mental health crisis or mental health related, it's documented, kept track of, we submit it to NAMI. So even on the chance that we're losing some of the data, like what we are retaining, I can tell you, because I think we've been doing this for 3 or 4 years now, is growing close to 30 incidents a month, where in the past it was in the teens. And that's not Durham, that's countywide for the 8 communities we're providing service to. So the trends are going up.
Joe, did you have some questions?
I just wanted to say that, there's certainly way more pros on, kind of making my little list here. The travel time is certainly a pro. Fire department support, that would be a huge driver. I listen to the calls, I listen to your calls. You guys are busy all the time. And supporting these guys is very important. It's more depth to the investigations. Even though everything gets investigated, like you had indicated here, all these calls, more focused, gives you more depth of the department as well, which is, the added manning, which bolsters your ranks, and helps everybody. I like the contract approach. I think it's a really good idea, and a good approach.
So I just have clarification. So you put out here estimated cost for 2 deputy proposal and then the 4. And I just want to make sure I understand. So 2 deputies would be one deputy in every 12-hour block. So there'd be 24-hour coverage between 2, or that's only if you have the 4 deputies?
4 deputies is 20. 2 deputies would be, you pick the 8 to 8, and you'll always have somebody on 8 to 8. And then on the off hours, it would go back to what you've had, which is rural patrol. 7 to 7, 8 to 8, 5, what 10 to 10, it doesn't matter. It would be 2 individuals hired, specifically assigned to Durham.
Oh, I see what you're saying. The
7
second
days a
day
week.
would be a different individual, so they'd...
I'd
so
be Monday,
1, 2
Tuesday,
on,
he'd be
2
Wednesday,
yeah.
Thursday.
Yeah.
I'd be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then he'd be Monday, Tuesday.
Okay. And obviously I know that these are just placeholders, but in terms of our budget mindset, that's the number we have here for that 2 deputy. So essentially we could say this 12-hour block, maybe it's our most dangerous 12 hours of the day or something like that. Most car accidents. That, not including vehicle outfitting and all that sort of stuff, is $288,000 a year.
And that is using a top paid individual
Yep.
and a middle of the road. So you
It
might
could
get lucky,
average
and we
a
get
little
2
less, a
3-year
little more,
people
yeah.
that could save you, $5,000.
And then
Can we?
then with the vehicle component, that's the 75,000 per year, or 75,000 spread amongst 3 years.
Yeah.
And so that leads me to the question: are all of your contracts with communities for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years? Is there flexibility there? Because I know that we're budgeting for things, on an annual basis, and if there's a cost that needs to be spread out across a few different years, we might have to talk about it a little differently.
Well,
so.
to start it, we could look at, I'm going to say rolling the dice, sorry, it's been a long day.
That's fine.
Rolling the dice to say this is causing us to be prohibitive, so what would work that could work? Maybe it's we finance everything for 4 years, which on the county side doesn't work because we're driving from Durham to Livermore, call to call. Maybe we could get by with a 4-year deal on the cars because they're going to be, in the town. Maybe we have grant opportunities.
Yeah.
Our cars typically last, we've been running about 5 years for a car because it's assigned to each deputy, so it's.
They take care of them like
it's not, one guy getting in one and one guy getting out, and it's the same car always being utilized and it's being beat. So I'm the only one that drives my car, so I tend to take
So
care of it.
in this 2 deputy situation, there'd be 2 cars?
Correct.
Okay.
I
And
think
so is that
what,
I'm just trying to
In our
understand
labor
the process,
contract,
yeah.
we have working conditions, and it's actually worked better for us because life-wise, having that, like we're running our cars to 125, 150,000 miles before we're getting them. When you're looking at cars that are rotated there, you're getting 75 to 100,000 miles out of them. Certain model cars were getting very low maintenance beyond, oil changes, trainee flushes, and brake pads and tires. There's certain model cars where we've had transmission problems, so we don't buy those anymore, But we've done very well, and the fleet's very well maintained, I think, because of, and it's a long history of the assigned cars. But they were also subject to call out after hours, which has happened recently more than we like.
I think what he was originally asking, like when we sign our solid waste contract is for 5 years. I think what he's asking is your contract representative an annual contract, a 3-year contract?
Currently, we do 1-year contract.
1-year contract.
Yeah, and that's where my only confusion lies, that if you have to spread the cost of the vehicle out, the 2 vehicles out over 3 years, and I'm not saying we would do this, but the situation where, we tried it out the year 1, people didn't want to pay for it year 2, so now you're stuck with the 2 cars. And so I didn't know if that was prohibitive in your contract language to say, hey, no, you can't, you gotta be on the hook long enough to pay the car off.
No, what it gives us the ability to do is put it into our county rotation the following year, so we wouldn't be buying as many cars on the county side.
Yeah, and then the only reason I ask is because someone's in the community would ask, well, does that mean we have to do it for X amount of years to pay for the vehicle? So I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yep. And the other
that
part,
today.
the reason for the
Even
1
if
year.
the number's not the concern I had here, just more of the.
Sure. The
how it works
1
out.
year option that works for us, we'd like guarantees, but the
Yeah.
problem is if you retire next year and I hire somebody new, it's a different ballpark. Where we're not doing it to make money. We actually try to transfer the real cost to you. Now, there's winners and losers. The guy in the middle, he might resign next year and his replacement might cost us more. We have to figure out a way to absorb that. At the same time, the guy at the top might retire this year and we might hire his replacement that costs us less. So in a year, it's a fair margin of error.
Yeah.
3 years out, it's less predictable because you
Yeah,
never
I
know.
totally understand that. As more of my questions weren't
You wouldn't
necessarily
be
the
on the hook,
number,
no.
but how the contract works.
And you'll
out.
see in both proposals, I used the family medical, and that was one of the reasons, we've just always gone with the family medical, so if I have a single subscriber and all of a sudden they get married,
Yeah.
it's just.
You're budgeting
cost
for the
is the
full
cost,
family as
correct.
opposed to.
And
Yeah.
one of our contractees actually requested that we did that because they were experiencing the changes in how everybody likes predictability in a budget, and it wasn't allowing for predictability. So we just said, well, our only option is to charge family. Ironically, most are on the family plan anyway. So every once in a while, maybe the county's, making $4,000 because I think that was about the difference. But overall, it made for easier budgeting and they didn't want to be into the details. So when we've gone to the schools, explained that's how we're doing it. But like I said, everybody on the plans, I think, is on family plan now. So.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. Yeah.
So you guys a calendar year or fiscal year?
Calendar.
Calendar, okay.
So it is.
So right now, all of our contracts are on a fiscal year, so we have to, figure out.
But our county budget is on
The
a
jail's on
calendar.
Oh,
fiscal
we
year.
know
Yeah, so
we know the
it's-
feel.
So the
Yeah,
jail's on
it's-
fiscal, Pole in the schools, fiscal.
We're working on it.
and
Maybe
then
we
We're
can
working
all
on
do
it.
it together.
That's, the county keeps saying they're working on it too.
But then they
so-
figure out it costs too much to convert it, so they don't do it. We work on.
Have you been watching
getting
our
by.
meetings?
You've talked a lot about the difference in salary. Would the expectation be that you would be hiring somebody for Durham with no experience, coming in with experience, going through the academy?
Every time we post a position, we get a different result. So like the last posting we did, I think all but one were academy grads. Some were too new of graduates, like 2 years, so their buyout option was too expensive. Luckily, the candidate that was hired was, everybody's choice anyway, so we didn't have to visit the buyout options. But the one before that, I think we only had 1 or 2 that had academy experience, and then we had new to the field. So we did a transfer from the jail, which we always like hiring from within. And then the other, actually, he was a transfer from the jail too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with military background. One had already been trained on the road because she was a transport deputy, so that made it easy. So my point is, I don't know what we'll have for an applicant pool. We've just been successful in recruiting.
And so I get the
You'll
leads
be,
me to
you'll
the
be
next.
covered if we have to send somebody to the academy.
And does that cost us extra if you have to send them to the
No.
academy?
It comes out of our training budget.
Okay.
Do you give one of the current deputies an option to be the Durham?
What we would do is we have Durham available, and if somebody internally wants it, they get to move over.
Okay.
So on this, on the reverse, what we've done is we've created a practice where if somebody in Poland wants the county position, seniority rules, and we
Sure.
transfer them, then we post the Poland job. So what we do is, hey, anybody want to be Durham? Because we had somebody that was working with us that was hoping Durham was going to get a contract. When we met with the selectmen, it was a few years back, I don't remember. It didn't happen, but
2018.
was it?
Yeah.
Okay, he was hoping that that would happen because he would have, I think he lived in Pownell or something.
Yeah.
But we don't know what the internal interest will be or external.
Another question I have in terms, you said that the person would need office space while they're here?
Yeah,
And what like is that defined as, like they need their
The
own
chief's
desk with
office.
phones?
It's not that big, they can have
Because as you can tell, space-wise, our select board now meets in Chief's
So
foyer
so
here,
basically,
so-
right now is they have a place where there's a computer, a desk, a small fridge, you know, to keep whatever. There is a phone line, but I don't know if that would be a
So
necessity.
Poland has the old town office, so the back of it is the rec department, front's the substation, there's like one desk in there. It gives them an opportunity to go have lunch,
Take a break.
take a break, to make any phone calls, but we're so equipped now with our mobile data terminals, cell phones, that a lot of them, when they actually have to go drop the paperwork off, they just drop it off at the office and they come back on the road, so.
So there is a need, by the way, to drop stuff off and pick stuff up
Yeah.
from the office, so at times they'll be in Auburn. But overall, we just ask for a place where we can set up for IMC.
And can the officers share one office?
Oh, yeah,
It's
yeah,
okay?
it's just
Yeah.
one office space.
And then vehicle storage while
They take 'em home.
They take them home. Okay.
Jerry, do you have any?
No, you're all asking really, really good questions here. It's a great conversation. But as a manager, I'm a facts and figures guy,
Yeah.
right? I don't really do well with the feels, you know, and emotions, you know. So I think in trying to get this, that's what we have to stick with, is like the facts and figures. And we don't really know how we compare with other towns as far as calls. So I guess getting back to Deb's question, I'll just ask it a different way. Given the calls that Durham has had, are we reacting right now, or are we being proactive and wanting to get? So
I would say
we're in a proactive.
Yeah, I think you're being proactive. I think,
Okay.
we're spread very thin. It's no secret in 2020, state police pulled out of call sharing. So we used to split the county in half. So 1 month, a deputy was covering Durham, Greene, Leeds, and Wales, and the state police was covering mine in turn of Livermore. And then the following month, we would rotate, so you would have that rotation. That went away. State police, like a lot of agencies, are suffering staffing issues right now. I'm not knocking them, it's just that's what you're reading about, and they're going through the same thing.
And
So,
I would, and I know maybe you need to get in touch with your feelings, but no, I would, and I hate saying.
I can't defend people's feelings.
Well-
I can defend facts and
Whatever,
figures.
I could take advantage of them. But anyway, so, I mean, and I hate bringing up the fire department because certain things we just don't like talking about. But if you were reacting, I'd bet dimes to dollars, it's gonna be due to an issue related to a fire call. Not to a fire call, but to a call the fire department's on. That's where we are in society, and that would be unfortunate. But that would be the type of thing. I don't think it would be to the burglary issue we had a few years ago, or to the amount of drunk drivers, or I think it would be, you're gonna start experiencing calls where the fire department might have an injury, or they couldn't respond to something, and there may be a casualty of a resident as a result. That would be a reactive. You haven't experienced that, but that.
Do we want to wait for that? That's the
Right.
Yeah,
question.
I think that's why we're here, because like
Right,
I think about
exactly.
with fire, with accidents, and you have, fire department responding, and you might have
Right.
an aggressive, angry person, there might could potentially be a weapon involved, someone trying to flee a scene, And I don't want us to be like, oh, we didn't worry about that stuff until.
And at the same
later
time, you know, I know he said he always appreciates us, that we always appreciate the fire department there, you know, strength in numbers. And, you know, some engage more with us because they realize it's just us. And then I've been on calls myself where I'm going round and round in somebody's house, not in Durham, but where a firefighter or a paramedic, I don't even know what he was, just stood outside, and I said, what were you doing? I mean, I have a guy in cuffs I can't control. And he said, we're not allowed to enter your residence until you have it under control. And, you know, that was a learning experience for me. But I get it, you know, but in the time when you're just looking at somebody staring at you out a window, it's a little, you know, but I'm sorry.
You don't have to
You had another
apologize.
question.
I would just, I don't expect you to have this. I would be interested to look at our fire department responding and see if this scenario happened, what that takes off of your responses. You don't have to answer that. That's obviously not something I'm expecting you to know. You know what I mean? But I would be interested to look at that to see if that takes any of
Some of
the
the
pressure
data,
off
sure,
the fire department.
some of the data is difficult to extrapolate that. So, you know, on a medical where they transport, it's still a medical for us. So I'm just looking at a medical call. The fire department responds, evaluated, medical call. We don't keep it, I mean, we do in our notes if sheriff, they would maybe have that data transports out. I think what you're also looking at is response times. You know how the fire department, and we talked about nighttime coverage, it's the response times. I don't know if sheriff keeps response times or just they did. Because when they're on the other side of the county, I have to best intelligent guess is more than 20 minutes on a lot of
I mean, the
calls.
calls today, for example, I know they were up in the northern end. One was at an accident. A car rolled over onto a propane tank. He had to clear to go help out. Another medical call in a neighboring town because that officer was tied up. And the other two, I think, one was coming from Wales after he had just cleared a crash. And the other one, I think, was up in the Turner area just finishing a call. So when they had the most recent call down here, you had 2 or 3 responding through, you know, so you are right. I mean, we do keep track of, I'd have to go through every individual call
Yeah.
to see what the response is.
We have the information available, we just don't document it.
Right.
Only when it's asked, and we look, took us 8 minutes, took us 28 minutes.
I think that's one thing from Jerry's heartless, feelingless facts and figures approach is that I think one thing that people in the community might want to know is, well, what is the average response time to get a sheriff here right now? And I think that is something that is one thing that many people can wrap their head around, and they say, oh, you know, because a lot of folks might not realize they might be coming from Livermore, East Livermore. They might literally be at the northern end of the county, and I think that's something that if we're going to present to a town, you know, an added expense or something like this, that's something that can be communicated well. And maybe you don't think that's an important thing to communicate, and maybe that's
I think it's all
my
important.
uneducated view on
We
it.
can
but-
talk to our director of communication because he's very good with our record management to see if he can kind of get an average response time for us. Like I said, for me to go do it, I would actually have to look at every call.
Yeah,
to
I understand it
service
would be
and say,
time
"It's a
consuming, you know,
Bob."
so I'm just,
So,
Josh, you had your hand and then had.
Just to answer that, I've been involved in 2 calls. One was an accident, one was an accidental 911 hang up. The accident, this was still during call sharing, so it was state police both time. One was near the Freeport line. It took the Freeport officer about 45 minutes to respond, and the state trooper about an hour and 40 minutes coming from Westbrook. And this was, you know, my pregnant wife and 2 other kids in the car. Another one, the accidental hang up on the 911 was like 2-hour response time where they came and.
Well, and you know, you're talking an hour, which is a long time anyway, but even somebody waiting 8 minutes, they feel like they're waiting 8 hours.
Oh, yeah.
In a crisis situation, yeah.
yeah.
So speeding is a huge issue in our town. I mean, it's just gotten really out of control. And so I'm wondering how it works if we're in a contract situation where where ticket revenue is being generated. How does that?
Doesn't come to us.
It doesn't.
We don't make
No.
any money off that.
So it
But
doesn't
they
come to
did
us
low-
either?
No.
Okay.
And you don't get toasters, you don't get any of that.
And actually, the state
I'm
noticed,
always looking for a revenue source.
well, the state noticed they were losing revenue, and at one point in time, somebody came up with the idea, we're writing tickets, let's up the fines. And what happened was, you were literally writing tickets where I think you were taking a week's pay from people. So since they've lowered the fines to encourage more tickets, because they charge
right.
more for a ticket, well, they were losing money off, because people weren't, I mean, you wanna write somebody a ticket for $260 when they're probably making $300 that week? So, cops have feelings. No, they don't.
So what does happen with ticket revenue?
It is, there's portions of it that support the academy, but it doesn't come back to us at all.
Goes to
Yeah.
the
Or
state,
to the
state
town,
revenue.
or
It
to
is
the
not really-
town's contract.
State.
I believe there was a couple towns that tried to do town ordinance. I think Portland at one time tried to do an ordinance, so they were writing under the ordinance, and then that got nixed pretty quick, so.
And I think the courts get small portions of each too, so.
I tried.
Well, I was
To
gonna
answer
ask the
your
same thing.
question-
It's the elephant in the room. Like, where's the ticket money go?
To answer
But
your question
you
about the
would
speeding now,
enforce-
I mean, we do get grants for traffic enforcement. We have been down here, especially early in the morning or late in the afternoon. So we have been doing some traffic enforcement as much as we can. It is, I mean.
You're welcome to park in my driveway. I live right down the road. And on the
Hey.
straight stretch, I'm not kidding.
I've been asking for years, so my driveway first.
Yeah.
But you would enforce like town ordinances that, like Lewiston, the running joke is, you could fight on Lisbon Street, but you better not smoke a cigarette. Like you
So
would enforce.
Lisbon, so Lewiston's a little bit different when it comes to the city ordinances. So because the city ordinances, as you know, either the city attorney has to defend the city or an officer who's been trained. So like in Poland many years ago, I actually went to some school for town ordinance prosecution. I think I had one case and I lost it, but I tried.
It's just like the
So-
parking tickets, that was an issue, are they enforceable?
Right, so some of those are difficult, and sometimes you have to work with the town's attorney to figure out what we can as the contract deputy. But we're much more like your police officer or police chief than we are right now.
And, it's what your priority would be to address. Like, I know in Poland, I used to work a lot with the code enforcement, or, the zoning type people, because some of those issues get pretty heated, so they need the companionship to go to so that, that was something, was expect, hey, we're gonna need you to do this, okay, we go, so you have those things more readily available. If you called today and needed help out of concern, obviously we'd go, but it'd be more of a coordination of when we can get there type thing.
So does the contract price include, like, the detectives that you were talking about, specialty support?
Yes.
So it's included in the price? for the
You
removal?
have that now, so I don't wanna,
Yeah, okay.
but when we, and the reason why I bring it up is because we have these resources now, but if you were looking to, let's say, form your own police department, there's a lot of
Right.
And we're not looking.
pieces to it, and then there's liabilities that contracting allows you to avoid, so
Well,
there's some
I-
cost savings with doing it as well.
I was going to say that I don't know how everybody, I mean, I kind of just got the gist of how everybody else, I don't think we have the internal infrastructure at all to be able to try to support the startup of an entire police department in this town. I personally feel
No, I
like
don't-
if
I don't
we're
think
going
so
to
either.
entertain this, it definitely needs to be the contract route.
So, I had a couple more questions here. Obviously officers have to go to court. If someone's going to court because of something that they had to deal with here in Durham, does that count towards those 12-hour shifts, or is that separate? And
We have
Yeah.
an overtime line, or it might be when they're working.
And
Yeah,
because
yeah.
of COVID now, because of with COVID, the DMV hearings and traffic violations, they can do it right on their computer through Zoom.
Okay, yeah,
In
and that's
their
what I
offices.
just, yeah, that's
In
what
their
I just
offices.
wasn't sure.
Not in their cars, please.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if it was
They
one of those
need an
situations of they're gonna have to go to court, they're gonna be there 5
Nope.
hours today, that counts.
We actually have our court officer with one of our detectives represents the agency for traffic, so they only get called when they're actually gonna go to a trial.
And then my next question, so at this point, tax revenue and stuff like that gets us our rural patrol. And say we enter into a contract where we're now adding in 12-hour dedicated service. In theory, our tax revenue and all that's still paying for that rural patrol. So while you have your one officer here for 12 hours, is the other county officers going to say, well, I'm not going to bother patrolling through Durham, or it's still the same?
We've kind of told them, like with Poland, hey, have a
Yeah.
presence in Poland. So we know they do. The idea is you have somebody dedicated, so on a busy day, they might not make it, but there's
Yeah.
always an effort. Plus there's the camaraderie aspect of it all.
Well, because the reason I ask is I can envision maybe a community member saying, well, if we're hiring county, does that mean our taxes go down because we're not paying for that patrol at all? And it sounds like they'd still be coming through. So I'm
And
just
a lot
trying
of
to,
these-
I'm trying to get all these questions out
Yeah,
while
'cause
we have
Lewiston
you all
Armored
here.
is still contributing.
Right,
Before you were
right,
patrol.
exactly.
And a
So,
lot of the calls we're going to now require two-man calls. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, even though if you have somebody in Durham who's a contract, there's probably a rural deputy that's gonna come as a secondary unit.
Mhm.
Because a lot of the stuff we have to do now is at least a 2 officer.
And-
but you got one officer starting as opposed
Yeah.
to waiting for.
And to look at things like trends, I'd say, you know, contracting makes it affordable because of all the back office operations and administrative costs, and like we're going through the main chief's accreditation right now, our facilities is causing, you know, is part of our problem, but we're addressing that. I think Penobscot County, if I'm not mistaken, has entered into a lot of contractual agreements, just because the need or the demand for the law enforcement presence or services has been great. And he's got some unique ones, and every county does their contracts different. We try to make it real costs, rather than, you know, some counties charge more. We're looking to make it affordable for you, and what's the true cost as close as we can be. You know.
My other question is, you know, I don't know how much they work, but I see the signs out there that says the speed limit and tells you how fast you're going. Now, if you have a dedicated patrol, is that where officers might say, oh, we're noticing some trends and we think that sort of temporary infrastructure could be helpful here, that gets brought in, or is that an extra
Do you
cost?
guys have the signs now?
I
No.
haven't seen one. I can think
Okay.
about 6
So
places that need one.
Poland,
but-
for example, purchased, I think they have 2. I think Green has 1. Actually, they put 8x8 posts all around the town, so all they have to do is pick it up, put it in, and it's installed.
So the town
So
purchased
the
that?
town actually purchased those.
We
The
move
one
around
in,
for
the
that.
one in Poland, we actually do move around for them. They got the little one that kinda, now they get the trailer. So when I get a call that says, hey, somebody down Harscalver Road is complaining about speeding, I'll call the deputy and say, can you move the sign down there? And we've shown a lot of times, there's either an issue or what the time frame is, so we can kinda concentrate on when the real issue. And then, of course, I think you have some that try to see how fast they can get
Yeah.
the sign up. So a lot of them now are shutting off at a certain mile, so they can't do that. But-
Does that thing keep data? Does it like?
So some of them actually collects data, so we can get it back, and then some are just, hey,
DOT
here's
put
your-
one on a road in Leeds, or was it Wales? It's the road that
Wales.
connects the two, and there was a,
Leeds Junction Road.
yes.
so you didn't know where it was?
Yeah.
Well, there was a resident there who was very unhappy with his home purchase, and I tried to explain to him, well, you're looking out your window, which is a small double hung, and when objects go, they're gonna look like they're going fast. No, everybody's flying through here, and DOT put it out, and there was nothing that supported what he thought was, you know, there was one vehicle clocked at like 20 over the speed limit, and we figured it was a police officer turning on the car to pull him over, but then he got so bad that 5 miles over wasn't acceptable. In Poland, you know, back to your car thing, when we did it differently, they own the car, they let a contract expire on an SRO position. So they have this car with our equipment in it, that created some issues in our lettering, but they kept this car forever, so we had a deputy who was passed, but he used to bring it around town, park in different spots, and they called
Yeah.
it Flat Stanley. So,
Yeah.
that was pretty effective.
Yes.
It was his cousin. So.
Yeah.
I
So-
think we have one of those speed signs. Ask Calvin.
We put one on
We have-
I'm told
Shiloh.
Public Works may have.
Probably
Yeah,
has one.
we
Yeah,
put one
he
on
has
Shiloh
one.
Road when the
We got some
girls.
roads
And
I mean,
if you have other questions,
if you guys have one and you wanna email me, cause we get calls all the time of, you know, where the speeding vehicles are, I can try to get, you know, I can tell you where we're getting calls, if you guys can put the sign there and collect the data.
and if you have more questions that come to mind after thinking about things, feel free to shoot us an email. I mean, I'd rather have an open discussion with you. Any concerns you might have, any knocks, any things you'd wanna see, and you'll get honest answers from us. I mean,
Is-
it is beneficial for all, so this is interesting, but I appreciate the approach, you know.
Is there any written policy on the folks that are assigned to the town and how they interact with the town government or the chief of police or the
Well,
fire chief? I mean,
We kind of tailored
expectations?
to, like, the SROs, they wanted certain things, so they manage, you know, what they want, we support each other. And it's the same thing in Poland, so like, Bill will go to the department head meetings in Poland every month, and sometimes we're called because residents are showing up to selectmen's meetings. But we've had staff in the past, we're just more involved, I think, than past administrations, but we've had staff in the past that had really good relationships in the town office, so if they needed paper or, you know, the administration wasn't involved, it was done directly with the patrol deputies. But for accountability purpose, I think you'd all recognize it would be beneficial that, hey, if you're wanting something, let us know, and we're all on the same page to make sure it gets through.
Currently, the Poland town manager will call me and say, hey, I got a citizen that's calling in complaining about X, Y, Z, and we'll have a conversation about it. Some stuff, you know, typically I can have a deputy go and address it. Some stuff is really not a police matter, but we at least have a conversation to try to find a happy medium.
And I think the structure of it, not so much would be in a policy, it would probably be in the contract. So what we're doing with what you're saying, you want some say, this, you know, labor contracts that are prohibited, like, our hiring, you know, it's in the contract. Internal get preference if they're sufficiently qualified, those types of things. But we usually encourage the town to get involved, like, with the hiring, so at least they see what we're getting. Sometimes they don't want to be because they realize, well, hey, this is spelt out and I don't know how to be a cop.
Like a hiring committee?
No, we do an oral board, and we've invited like the town manager to go.
I see.
The schools, they had, for the SROs.
So the SROs, we would kind of identify a potential candidate,
Then have them in.
and then we would bring them, and that candidate would meet with the principal, superintendent, the administrators of the schools.
And if you follow us on Facebook, you'll see that our SROs are really well liked, so they're doing something.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question was, you
Yeah,
know,
we have a Facebook.
when you hire someone, do we get a chance? Because in the beginning, I think you said, you know, who wants to do Durham? Do we have a say at all? Like, does the board or myself get to interview that person?
We would have you involved, but what we do beforehand is explain to you what we're looking at, like labor contract wise. Now, we've discovered that it was interpreted incorrectly in the past, but we haven't had to use it says sufficiently qualified. It doesn't say least qualified.
Right.
So there is that opportunity, and we'd welcome it, because having you involved with the discussion of, hey, I really like this guy, well, you know, we kind of don't because of this. So it's beneficial to both sides.
Right.
Because you're paying for it.
So is that engagement as, rather, when you say involved, could that look like literally someone from our board or Jerry is on your hiring committee doing the interviews, or more or less like less formal arrangement there?
We've done it, well,
We've
kind of done it both ways.
Yeah.
We've had some that said, you identify who you want, and then, or who you're like, and narrow it down for us, and then send it to us. Typically, I think it works better for all doing it together. You know, from my experience, whether it was, I was involved in an SRO interview way back in Poland, that worked better. We all kind of saw the same thing. And as far as the patrol deputies, Poland used to want to be involved, but then we've had a lot of positive experience there, so it's kind of been, you know, you handle it. We bring them to the select board meeting to say, here's your new deputy. But if you want to be involved, or if you want your town manager involved, we welcome it.
Okay. Yeah.
We're hiring a lot more with experience who, our most recent candidate came from Falmouth. He was traveling from Turner to Falmouth every day, and it was a quality of life. I mean, he took a cut and pay to come to us because, you know, he didn't want to do the commuting anymore. He likes the smaller town atmosphere, and I mean, he's doing a great job.
And we try to do healthy blends of age, female to male. We struggle with we've only got 2 full-time female patrol deputies. You know, there's a goal of like 30%. I can't say that I have a goal like that, but, you know, female deputies or law enforcement are it's proven that they are calming influences at scenes. It's beneficial for different sets of circumstances. So we are actively always trying to get, like, for lack of a better term, diversity within the ranks. And you don't want to get too old or too young, because then if you hire the old guy, he ain't gonna fit in with the young guy, or the young people ain't gonna fit in with the old guys. And I think with the experience we've brought in, it allows for a lot more growth from all of them. It's like a constant training, so.
So just to be transparent about our process, I think what we've talked about as a board, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we would go to the town ahead of entering into any kind of contract to gauge whether or not the town was interested in doing this. And then at that point, it would go, well, it would be a warrant article, but not to find out if they want to do it, more of like a poll question, right?
Because I was gonna
And then-
suggest, if you do something involving finances, do it like 6 months out from when, so like if your budget takes effect in, well, January, and I don't know when I thought your town meeting was in the spring.
It's in April.
Well, okay. If you give us like a 6-month warning, so that way we can start a hiring practice, structure things the way the town would want. So if you're going for absolute stamp of approval with the finances, give us some time.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, is that at this point, we would be likely going, because unless we went in November with the election and asked it in November. Is that what you're thinking?
I think my suggestion previously is that we are going to have hopefully one of the biggest turnouts at this election. And that is, to me, there's gonna be hundreds % more at this election than there will be at our town meeting.
Right.
So that's the time to do it.
Yeah,
To
there'll be
put
more
it
than
out-
125 people.
to
to
put it
vote
out
at
Is that
this
what your
election.
requirement is?
No, that's what we
No.
had at like the
Oh.
170 people.
To put
or
it
something
out
like that.
in November as a question of if the town is interested in engaging in police service, law enforcement. And then in April, that's when we would go to town meeting to deal with the budgetary part of it.
Sure.
So this obviously isn't gonna be binding until April, so we would come back to you again for updated numbers.
Yeah,
If
the-
the town approves, and then we go.
I mean, if you tell
to
me
as a
we're
comment.
gonna go with 2, I can try to narrow it down. Again, I used
Averages.
the averages. I didn't wanna go do 2 brand new officers who, green, to give you the lowest number, cause that's really not realistic, so.
Jerry, you had something?
I would think that the contract would probably start July 1st to June 30th, and get the permission or.
So
Maybe.
my question here would be, and this is a little housekeeping for us, if you don't mind for a quick second, is that if we had an election in November to say, do we want to pursue, 2 officers or whatever, and the answer is yes, that's still kind of getting late in the budget season. We're talking end of, like, middle of November to pull something together for April if they need a 6-month lead time to come up with a number.
No, I
Oh,
don't
we
think they
don't-
need.
No. So if you get it approved in April for your July budget, like this year with Turner, we had to actually hire the person in August.
Yeah.
So if we see where you're going, we can prepare for that. And it might be the 2 new cars we're getting in the county, they get delayed because we need them in advance to go to Durham. And then when the Durham contract kicks in, then we buy the county guys there. So we can work with that. But, and if you're saying in April you'll know, I would think we'd be able to have.
Well, we'd have to put the budget item in to be voted on in April. So we'd vote in November to say, yes, we want to pursue this idea. We would then need to get a number to put into the budget to then go through our budget approval process and
Yeah,
then
so
get voted on.
that'd be
So
fine.
after November, we could start putting.
Okay, I misunderstood you. I thought you said it was going to take 6 months to come
No,
up with
we
that
just
number.
needed a
little
That was my
leeway.
6 months to hire the
misunderstanding.
people.
Okay,
and-
yeah, that's totally understandable. Yeah.
And even if your contract, you want to do it July to
Yeah.
June, like when we did the last SRO contract, we didn't have somebody in place. So all we did is that first year, it actually was like 11-month contract, just
And-
because we didn't have.
Prorated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't charge
prorated.
them 12 months, we charged them 11.
Yeah.
And so another question I have, and this is just always trying to do my due diligence here. When we look at options for law enforcement in town, I've kind of written it down. What we've had presented to us so far is nothing. Do nothing different and stick with the rural patrol we have here, which that is causing people to start, say, maybe we should think proactively, do some things different. The next option, it sounds like, would be, contracting for 12 hours a day or maybe 24 hours a day. Those are two options. And then the most expensive option, which I believe is off the table for most of us now, is creating our own department. Because I just am curious, is there an option between the nothing and the 12 hours a day? Because I know you have your normal 12-hour day, but is there any, hey, if we ask real nice, you'll patrol for 4 hours in the morning? I got to ask if there's any other options like that.
We routinely deal with, hey, I live on
Route 9.
Green Street. I'm just gonna name
No,
a
use
neutral.
Route 9.
All right, well, I live on Route 9 and, we're dealing with these speeders. I'm like, well, could you help us narrow it down? Because it's a big county and there's only 3 guys patrolling it.
Yeah.
Well, it's between 5 and 9, 5 and 7. Okay, we'll try and get a guy out there from 5 to 7. But it's try to.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we're successful doing it. We get a dead end road that I see the guy's name calling me every spring. He lives in Turner on a lake where Little Wilson Pond is. And he says, yeah, they're at it again. So as soon as I see him call, I just call the deputy that's working. Can you swing by? Because, and then the presence, it stops.
Yeah.
So you can get that, but you can get it if they're not at a car accident or someplace else.
Yeah, and it also sounds like it works until it doesn't again.
And speeding vehicles probably our #1 complaint. And of course, the deputy, I can go to Route 9, I can get almost to her house where we're gonna sit, and then I get a call. So I'm gone. Or I'm there for 5 minutes or 15 minutes, and I get a call. So that's the frustrating part about.
So if you
And
call with a
more-
target, we could try to address it, but if you're asking, is there anything between 12 and nothing, or 24, contracting and nothing,
Yeah,
not really.
and the reason I ask is because I just want to make sure we're doing due diligence, and we had you all here today because we think it's really important that everyone in the community can, watch the questions we're asking and stuff like that. And what I hear sometimes is people say, well, if you just sent someone down here on Davis Road at 8 a.m., they'd get 7 people right away. And then, I'm just seeing, is that an option? And it sounds like, yeah, it sounds great, but at 6:30 on your way to Davis Road, you get called to Livermore.
And the problem is, as soon as we park on Route 9, then people start playing the headlight games.
Or it goes right
And
on
next
the
thing you
Facebook
know-
page.
Or the Facebook
Officer
page.
on Route 9, slow down.
And next thing you know,
Well, I get a kick out of
everybody's
the ones that warning people on Route 4.
Yeah.
Why would you warn people on Route 4 that
Yeah.
they're out front of the Hannaford on the islands, watch out? You should probably hope they're on Route 4 out front of the, but I guess we're looking at them.
Yeah, I figured this was the answer, but I still wanted to ask, so.
And to let you know, we do put in for traffic enforcement grants that it identifies target areas from the state data. And they provide us the funding to have additional patrols. And I can say with almost absolute certainty that some of the routes we talked about here in Durham are part of those.
Yeah.
grants.
And so even if we have a dedicated officer, you
still have
still
those
pursue
things.
that and say, hey,
Yeah.
we got this traffic enforcement grant, so now you have your 12-hour person, but we're still gonna pursue that.
As a
We're
matter
not
of
just gonna
fact,
write it off
yeah,
because you have coverage.
We spent the money they provided initially, so we applied for an adjustment. It's actually Sergeant John Gay that handles that part. And we got more funding to do more of these patrols. So, are they effective? I don't, we got guys out there for 4-hour blocks. They're generating a lot of activity, and it's, again, data-driven. The state provides us where they want us to be, and that's where we go during those 4-hour blocks, so.
I want to clarify one thing again. So the price that we pay today for rural coverage stays as is, and this is just an upper.
Yeah, and this rural coverage would still
Would still exist, yes.
exist, but.
Our
the-
county
not-
tax on our tax bill,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
what pays for what our coverage is now.
along with the jail and everything else.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
and, but that's,
Yes.
that's just it's a good thing to clarify, because I know that's a question folks will have is, oh, does that mean our county tax goes
Well,
down?
and
No, it
I
doesn't
did
work that way.
interviews with high school students about county government. I was the interim county administrator for a while, and I had to let her know, hey, it's okay, because every year I go to what they call the seniors college at UMLA, and I speak to a class about the sheriff's office, and these are people, some are retirees, some are Josh's age, and they don't know anything about county government. So I had the high school students that, and where it's gone from there is it's triggered an interest where now every department head is going to the senior college to speak, because people just don't know much about, and there's nothing wrong with that in county government. They deal more with their towns and the state, so.
Well, this has answered all my questions, and I'm usually a big question asker. So.
Speaking of data, DOT came to town and is it Rabbit Road and
No, it was Millbrook. Oh, yeah, Rabbit is gonna put a stop
Rabbit
sign.
Road and Quaker
And,
Meeting?
136,
136 is the 11th most dangerous intersection in
I
the
believe
state.
it.
That was my
Yeah.
really
I know
close
you guys
call.
have some new fancy stop signs down there.
Yeah, they
talking
wanna
about
make it.
looking
I think
at
one
those-
already got
They're
one.
gonna come and make that, they wanna make that
It's a
a four-way
four-way,
stop.
yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna be.
Yeah, yeah, surprisingly, the 11th.
Well, I mean, because
That's,
part of
you know,
the
when you're the 11th, got the 11th most dangerous intersection. in the
Pretty
state,
big
that's-
state, too,
that's-
yeah.
That's good data.
we don't get any
That's-
friggin' moose out there either, so that's not even part of the problem. It's
Yeah,
just
I would have
speed.
never guessed, you know, I was looking at a house that was for sale just beyond the intersection. I wouldn't, you ever see those, you know, I'm like, and the whole time I
I
was on the
just
road, I
handled
didn't
too many of
remember.
those accidents where somebody
Yeah.
has gone, so I just came through Sunday on my way to Freeport, it's like that intersection is always
Yeah.
when I slow and really look
Soper
to-
Road,
Yeah.
Rabbit
Yeah.
Road, and the Dead Man's Curve. Those are
Runaround
kind of the
Pond,
three hot
yeah,
spots.
Route 9,
There's-
that one.
For you all, there's two more tangibles that you just don't see. First of all, it's another first responder in town that are ready to respond. They're not responding to a station or to the car, they're usually on the road. Defibrillators in the car, medical equipment, so faster than sometimes the fire department. The other is the grant process that we're trying to deal with Maine DOT. I've been working with Calvin. We're trying to get a guardrail on Newellbrook. We've had several accidents. But unless the sheriffs have done paperwork, and they're so busy during these storms that are all snow, that they can't cover all the car wrecks. So we're actually losing data, losing car accident reports, and losing the ability for grants and other aspects of infrastructure for the town, just because they're spread so thin.
And I will tell you, Durham, in the wintertime, you might as well have somebody down here.
Yeah.
I've come down, I don't typically patrol, but I have come down here several times in a snowstorm just to,
And last winter wasn't even that bad.
yeah, it's,
But I gotta say, in closing, after this conversation, you guys have got me convinced on this 24-hour coverage.
Let's
And you're
talk
gonna
about,
pay for it,
let's
right?
talk about the 12 hour.
I would be interested to know, I mean, we would have, that's I think also part of the reason why I was asking about the call volume, is because we would need to know if it was more advantageous for us to have a 12-hour shift that was overnight, or if it was
We can figure
daytime
that out really
coverage.
quickly. like,
Okay.
Yeah.
Where are the calls and where are the calls that are beneficial to have the coverage? Now, you know, most people would think that, oh, Fridays and Saturdays when everybody's out hooting and hollering, I can tell you that Monday is sometimes a bad day for people. But it would be interesting to, if you get there, to look at what would be the best bang for the buck. I just don't know if you'll get the results you're looking for out of it, but we can pull that easy.
My last thing, and then I'm done, sorry.
No, you're good. Don't apologize.
What I feel like has a tendency to happen, and I think our last town meeting is a testament to that, is that when we can provide the resident, and this is, you know, really a lot about Jerry and the other department heads that have done a really good job educating us, so that we can also then in turn educate the residents. When residents are educated, they vote more proactively. And so between now, after the board we go through our process and we get to the point where we've decided whether or not we're gonna put this on the warrant in November, the public education process, like how involved and helpful would you be
Helpful as
in
you
that leading up to it, if this
he
is
loves
what we
public
were?
speaking.
No, I don't really.
Our town, we love the public hearing. Like,
Yeah,
So,
where and that's a big thing, and
it is.
even if people can watch us ask the questions, it's still important to a lot of people to be able to, you know, hear it from the person themselves. So we oftentimes have a little thing over the Eureka Center. Surprisingly enough, we'll get, sometimes we have 175 people show up at the town meeting, but we'll get 40 people to show up at a hearing for an hour and a half on a Tuesday night. And so we weren't sure if that's something you would.
Not only would we
be
be
able
willing to
to-
do it, but I'm 100% confident I could get staff willing to participate, because sometimes they don't just like hearing it from us. You know, even though this has been a very good conversation, I think having, you know, just the boots on the ground or the supervisors speaking of what they're seeing, because they can speak to it to a different level of passion, like what you're experiencing, and I think that, I know that rings with some people, you know, but I think just the exchange of information, and you know, and listening to you talk or even Bill talk, it brought about some ideas in my head that I didn't know where this conversation was going, and I didn't know what you wanted to look at, so we said, well, we'll figure it out.
Or
But
like
it-
any kind of like PowerPoint and anything like that we would be able to like put on the website, put in the newsletter, you know, that type of thing leading up to it. Like, these are the pros.
Yeah, I mean, like a beautiful thing in my mind, again, I understand this administrative burden. I deal with public outreach, so what I'm thinking here is, if there was someone who could say, hey, before Poland added it, this was their response time.
Right.
After they added it, the response time
So
went to that.
ironically, Poland's had the contract since 1982.
All right, then never mind. The
So,
cars weren't even
no,
that
but
fast
No,
back
the
goes
then.
to
four
show
person
you-
has only been a couple of
Right.
years.
But they started off with just one,
Mhm.
and then they went to two, and it was like a 16-hour coverage, and then they were on call,
Well-
and now we're up to 4. It's working much better.
And the reason I bring it up is just because we recently added night coverage for EMT, and it was like the night that they started. We had literally, you would have thought Chief lined it up perfect. The night that they started, there was a medical call and it was rolling out. And my next question: can you guys drive EMT cars if we need you to know?
No, I mean-
We have in the past.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I mean, if you're, what makes it easy for us on this angle is if your town administration and the select board is in agreement of you want this pursued and you want us to help you pursue it, and you're talking of like a PR campaign, it makes it easier for us to participate in that because we know we have the people running the town that want to help in getting this done. So, you know, right now we're providing numbers to certain towns because they're evaluating. We can do that, you know, we can, if you guys have questions off what you're seeing, that'll help us. Because if you have those questions, others are gonna have those questions, so it's better to put the answers out first. So it's all useful, and we'd have to probably recap this and talk about some of the experiences we had when we entered the Poland agreement. Like, a lot of people overlook the liability issues that the town escapes by contracting. It makes it more cost effective. And the ownership you have in it. It's a little different than not a department, you're right under you, but you still have an active role in it. So yeah, we can help with all that, and we have some staff that like making that computer generate. I'm no good at it, but a couple people come to mind that for this purposes, it's, like I said, it's beneficial to us as well if you were to do something. So they'd be actively participating.
So my last thing, and I know numbers come later, but everyone's gonna wanna know like a ballpark. And so I know we talked about this 288, 807 is a high paid and a lower paid, both got family coverage. And then it could be, you know, another 75K per vehicle, so that's 2 vehicles, 150K, or is that?
We were gonna finance it.
Yeah.
Unless you have a CIP budget with
Yeah.
money in it to say, we'll pay for
Well,
it out of
and so what I mean is, a contract
Drop, drop.
annually in the 288, the numbers I was adding here, the 288 to 335,000 a year is in that range. So we're talking right around that
To include
300,000.
capital and everything, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a fair. and
Again,
we'll
I'm
get-
not pinning you down. I'm not
No,
going to call
I-
you in 6 months and be like, you said 288, you know, but
No, actually, at the three, as you say, 335,
I said
That actually
335,
gives us a-
807 was with the 2 vehicles and 50,000 a year going towards for 3
don't hold me
years.
to this, but I mean, that gives us a
435.
comfortable cushion.
I had 288 plus 50.
But,
Guys,
150 divided
Wait,
by
back
3
to,
for 3 years, but either way.
Yep.
Public Works.
Okay,
I thought you were doing it.
so I mean, like Poland, that's what we do. The deputies that work in
But
Poland that
the
are
280
working,
to
they
335
go to
would be
public
comfortable
works.
because
If for some reason they're working an overtime shift in the county, then
interest
it's
rates.
on our dime at
That's-
public works will do that.
Prior to COVID, when we go out to bid and the interest rates, it seemed like as a government agency, we were getting favorable interest rates compared to what the market. Coming out of COVID and financing with the interest rates we've been getting, we're treated like, and I hate saying that, but we're treated like you would be if you drove up to Lee and bought a truck tonight. Where it seemed like we got, and
Hey, I
don't know.
bought in 2020. I'm good.
Well, no, I'm just saying, but and I don't know if you've experienced it or, but it seemed like prior to COVID, if we'd finance things, the financial institutions, it's almost like bid low to get our business. Now we put it out there, if they even wanna bother with us, we're paying, you know, what a consumer would pay, which is
And-
odd.
And on that final note, there could be an option though, where if we see the interest rate and we have a cash reserve, we might say, we might want to just purchase the vehicle outright now to save the money on the interest, and you could still outfit it and work with that as well, or does it have to be structured? I'm not saying we would want to do that, but I just want to make sure we know our options.
Well, getting off the ground, if we want to do whatever we can to make it affordable and successful, we could tailor it later on. Like I said, when we originally started, Poland owned the equipment, but it created a lot of work doing that. So we proposed to them, we'd rather take ownership. In that, we bought their 2 new cars, and they gave us their 2 old cars as they traded them in. But whatever it takes to get going that is
I guess
palatable
I
for
should
the town. we'd be
rephrase.
willing
What I mean is, if you're gonna have to buy 2 new cars for this, and then say we're gonna finance them, and if we say, hey, we have the cash on hand and we don't want to pay the interest rate, could we have a contract where you're buying them, but we're buying them outright, and then
Yeah, and then the
operating?
cost is eliminated.
Yeah, and
you
that
could.
just I'm just not
what
saying
we're-
we would want to do that. I don't want anyone to hear at home that I'm spending our reserves. I'm just
No,
saying I want to know the option.
What we're gonna do is, our treasurer would probably call around to see what rates we're getting, but what we would use is, what did we pay last year? We paid $45,000 for the car, and, to equip it and all this stuff, and here was where our payment. We'd call the guy, what are the cars going for? I mean, there was one year where they went up, $12,000?
Well, and that's my thought is like 3% interest rate's different than a 7 to 9% interest rate. And we got budget committee members.
Well, so we would
watching,
base
so
it
I
on
want to make sure they hear these numbers
what we
too.
most recently experienced.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I have no more questions. I know I've said that twice, but I mean it this time. So, if anyone else has any,
I just want to say thank you. You've given, I'll be honest, I came in almost completely against this whole idea, and now I've almost gone 180 degrees the other way. And so, I know, I can see your head growing already.
You
So-
realize this is televised, right?
I know.
And I had to watch what I said.
I know. It really surprised me, because I really thought, I was like, this seems like a lot of money, but it sounds like there's a lot of benefit that I wasn't thinking about. So I really appreciate you guys taking this time, because I know you've already worked a full day. And also, I just want to throw, you guys, law enforcement, a long time, family members and all that. And so I value your opinion, so I really appreciate it.
Still
Any
not
other
sitting in his
questions?
driveway, but
Yeah.
you're welcome.
yeah, well,
Just a couple hours a week, just on the weekends, slow them down.
yeah, just to echo what Josh said, we appreciate your time and walking us through all these. I know there's a lot of questions, and it was just fact finding, and really appreciate the feedback.
And like I said, just shoot us an email if the group comes up with them, and we'll, pull numbers, whatever you need, because again, it gets us thinking too, which isn't a bad thing. Thanks for the
Perfect,
opportunity.
thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Thanks, we appreciate it.
So we have nothing else on the agenda for tonight, and we'll keep it that way. So we'll adjourn now at
7:47.
7:47.
You need a motion to adjourn?
Oh, sorry.
No,
Do
I
we
don't
need-
think
it's not
so.
a special meeting. So.
It's a workshop.
Oh, no,
It's a
workshop.
Workshop, perfect.
I don't think that we. I'm gonna go stop
you.
the.
I'm gonna go eat dinner.
Don't forget to turn off your microphone so you don't waste battery.
Jerry only budgeted for 2 sets of batteries apiece this year.
Jerry,